We have an apartment complex that has 250 apartments to rent, and they're looking at if they rent X apartments, their monthly profit in dollars is given by this capital P of X. So you rent X apartments and you get out profit in dollars. How many apartments should they rent in order to maximize their profit? And what is the maximum profit going to be? So a common misconception might just be, well, if you can rent up to 250, rent all 250. And that's not necessarily true, because profit keeps in mind revenue minus cost. So having more apartments that you rent is going to cost you more in maintenance, in maybe staffing, also definitely in taxes. So they want to figure out what's going to be the wisest way to split up this complex. Do they want to try to do all 250 apartments, or is there going to be a better number to rent to maximize their profit? Absolutely. So our objective function that we're working with is this P of X. This is what we want to maximize. This is what we're going to be taking the derivative of in our first step to find any critical numbers. And then our second step is to think about what interval of interest are we on. So what's the least amount of apartments that they could rent out? That would be 0. Can't rent out any less than that. And then the max that they could rent out is 250. And they want to figure out, should we do all 250 or should we not? So we could see what's going to be the smartest move for their profit. So now we're ready to take the derivative of negative 8x squared. We're going to bring down that power. Negative 8 times 2 is going to be negative 16x to the first. Derivative of 3200x is 3200. And derivative of negative 80,000 is just 0. It's a constant. So we have our derivative. We're going to set it equal to 0. This is nice because we get an mx plus b, so we don't have to factor it or anything. We just want to get x on one side by itself. So I'm going to start by subtracting that 3200 over. Try to get that x on the left. So we get negative 16 times x equals negative 3200. So x isn't quite by itself. It's multiplied by negative 16. So I'm going to divide to get rid of that multiplication. So x is negative 3200 divided by negative 16. Our critical number is 200. And remember, x is representing apartments. So on our second step, we're going to compare that critical number to our endpoints as long as it's on the interval of interest. So we want to figure out what's the profit if they rent 0. That's our lower endpoint. Our upper endpoint is 250. What's that profit going to be? And then our critical number is 200, and that is on the interval of interest. So we do need to test it to see what's best. So obviously they've invested some money into this. They're probably not going to have the goal of renting 0 apartments, but we're still going to plug it into the function and see what we get. So we're going to do negative 8 times 0 squared plus 3200 times 0, which is all just going to be 0. And then we have minus 80,000. So if they go into business to try to rent out apartments and they fail, they end up having 0 leases signed, they're going to be out $80,000 every month that happens. So their profit off of renting 0 apartments is negative $80,000. Definitely not ideal. Next, I'm going to plug 200 into the original function, see what that y value is. Negative 8 times 200 squared plus 3,200 times 200 minus 80,000 gives me a monthly profit of 240,000. Sounds great to me, but let's compare that to 250. Do they end up with more profit by renting more apartments, or does the cost outweigh the benefit of doing those 50 extra apartments? So we're going to plug in 250 to the equation. Negative 8 times 250 squared plus 3,200 times 250 minus 80,000. Their monthly profit would be 220,000. So what's our recommendation going to be? What's going to give them the absolute max money? Negative 80,000, 240,000, or 220,000? Definitely $240,000 is the highest monthly profit that they can get. This might be that having those 50 extra apartments could have just put them into a different tax bracket and made it not worth it. Or maybe by law, they have to have extra maintenance people that they have to hire, and those salaries make it not worth it. There's something with the cost that's making it so that the profit is less there. So it's more revenue renting more apartments, but then there's a higher cost as well. And profit is revenue minus cost. So our recommendation is going to be to rent 200 apartments for an absolute max profit of $240,000. Not a bad month. Absolute max, and you could even put monthly profit since this looks like it's in months, of $240,000.